I did do that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to RickCast on this beautiful 13th of May, 2025. I hope everybody's having a wonderful evening. Actually, yeah, look at that. We have some good people showing up for us tonight all over on Getter and on Rumble and on YouTube, and I'm glad to see you guys. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday. Tuesdays are a rough day. Because Mondays happen. It's not yet Thursday, but you're here and I love you for it. We got a great show for you this evening. Trump did some things in Syria, in Saudi Arabia regarding Syria that we're going to talk about. David Hogg, poor David Hogg. Not really, but we're going to have some sympathy for him because we might as well. He's trying to win back the males in the Democratic Party, and they just don't want it. They just don't want the males. They don't even want the David Hoggs, which is crazy. They just want the woke people. So no to that. He's out, or at least they're trying to put him out, or maybe he's out, or whatever. There's drama with him, and that's sad. Pope Leo XIV has an AI. He's talking about the dangers of AI, and that is partially the reason why he chose his papal name. We'll get into that for my non-Catholics. It'll be an interesting historical lesson for why our popes take their certain names and the meanings behind their pontificates. It'll be nice for y'all. It's all right, Dean. It's good to see you, buddy. I'm glad to see you here. As always, good to see you, my friend. And then finally, it's not in the title, but because you can only put 100 characters in the title, Pete Rose has been reinstated into baseball, and I think it's about daggone time they put him in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to ask your opinion on that when we get to it. And I have a couple of hot takes to warm up the show for y'all. But if you do, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, do all the fun things to help the show grow. I appreciate every single one of you watching today. I don't need to do it twice. And I hope you enjoy what we're doing here. It is it's not your typical news show. It's more about what you guys are bringing to the conversation as well as me. I'm actually looking over here because I got multiple people on Rumble. I need a better setup, but if you watch a show long enough, you realize I do need a better setup, and it's eventually coming. So let's do a couple warm up. I don't want to say warm up exercises because that sounds like we're in a seminar, and nobody wants to be in seminars like icebreakers and all these other kinds of things. Everybody hates it. I get it. We're not doing that. But I do have a couple things to bring up. I don't want to call them icebreakers. My hot takes, things that we want to talk about, but not dedicate too much time to. So let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. If you are interested in increasing your chances of diabetes, KFC, always a marker to help you in such a thing, is trying to help you even more. So today, KFC is announcing a new limited edition gravy flavored ice cream, which the crazy thing is these things get tested. These things get tested and they get focus grouped and they get all these things together and then they release it. It's not like the board was going, hey, we need to drum up some social media presence today. Why don't we put out a post saying we're going to make gravy flavored ice cream? They actually test this stuff. They actually try to see if people actually will consume it. And apparently enough fat people are in these United States that thought, you know what I really love about KFC is the gravy. That's what I really want is the gravy. So they're making it now. KFC always does this kind of stuff. KFC is one of the few out of the Yum brands. Pepsi owns Yum and Taco Bell and one other store. And they're always doing weird stuff. They're always doing like weird things with KFC. If you listen to my show back on the radio, they every year during Christmas time, they would release a KFC scented log, which one of these days I actually need to go buy. I'm actually going to have to do that. So you could put it in your fireplace and the smell of KFC's 11 herbs and spices or whatever it is would fill your home. I think I'm going to do that this year and report back to y'all because that would be pretty interesting to see. But if you are interested in increasing your chances of getting diabetes, yeah, you can go check out the KFC flavored ice cream. Yeah, not a great look. Not a great look. But somebody apparently thought it was a great idea. Somebody thought it was a good idea to do. All right, let's get to our second hot take or second news story of the day as we're waiting for people to kind of filter into the show here. This one I wasn't planning to talk about, but it's kind of sweet satisfaction for me. And that's all this show is about. It's about satisfying my urge for approval and making sure that I am correct all the time because I am. And it regards the type of people that we in the conservative movement have brought in over the course of since 2016 to now. And so it's James Lindsay. Let's just get to it. James Lindsay, who has good evening, Mark. I hope everything's going well, buddy. James Lindsay is the kind of guy who saw an opportunity, much like Mike Cernovich and others. This might not be a popular opinion, but I really don't care. There's a lot of grifters, Will Chamberlain, a lot of guys that are, supposedly intellectual thought leaders that didn't exist before 2016. And that's fine. Nobody's saying you couldn't change sides. I famously voted for Barack Obama in 2012, back when I was much, much dumber, but had more hair. Maybe they correlate. I don't know. Either way, James Lindsay was one of these people that came in talking about the woke left and their politics, and he was accepted immediately because it was part of that 2016 acceptance of anybody to make the tent bigger so we could win, and the non-traditional Republican voters. And so yes, it happened that he was there and everybody thought he was all great because he sounded intellectual. He's a pseudo intellectual. That part is clear. And people like me sniffed him out pretty early on because it always seemed like he was a person that saw grift, came to the right, and was always ready to go back to the left. One of the biggest there was two examples of this James Lindsay meltdown. The first one being that somebody asked him, hey, now that the woke left is finished or whatever the case may be, are you going to continue to hammer down? He goes, no, I think I'm going to go after conservatives now. Essentially saying I'm going to go after people on the right. And then the second one was his blatant anti-Catholicism. Now, there's a lot of anti-Catholics out there. I can't do anything about it, but pray for y'all. But he, being in the intellectual thought movement, was one of the leading anti-Catholics out there, calling traditional ideas backwards and all this other kind of stuff. Of course, I called him out on it, and he blocked me like he famously does. That was like 3 years ago. But this happened the other day where he tangled with Taylor Marshall. And it's kind of funny to see Taylor Marshall get spicy with people. And so it was one of these things where we're seeing quotes from Pope Leo back when he was Cardinal Robert Prevost. And Dr. Taylor Marshall says, let us stand in full agreement with His Holiness, saying communism has penetrated even Christian circles disguised as solidarity. It is our pastoral duty to expose it. And that's where James lost his ever fat loving mind. And let's be honest, James is a fat, lazy idiot. He is. And he's always been this kind of sloppily dressed fat moron. So it's interesting to see him go this way. But he came out saying, no, you don't. If you did, I'd be your leader instead of kicked to the curb. Stupid fascist. You're not anti-communist. You're communist one step removed, given how the PRC runs 0 steps today. See, what the hell is he even talking about there? All I know is that he is mad that we did not make him our leader. He had these delusions of grandeur that he was going to be accepted into the conservative movement. And then we were just going to elevate him and we were all going to, bow to his whims. And that didn't happen. Although I will say, this is probably one of the greatest slapdowns I've ever seen. When the Pope is speaking, atheists should keep silent. That's a pretty great post. I mean, I'm not a Taylor Marshall like fanboy, but that's pretty spicy for Marshall, and hats off to him for smacking James Lindsay around rhetorically, obviously. But James Lindsay is not a friend to conservatives, but he's at least one of the vocal ones. There's a whole group of these people that showed up out of nowhere, professing to be Trump conservatives or Trump Republicans or whatever you want to call them. And then as soon as the mask came off, they started trying to push other types of ideology within the conservative movement, trying to move the Overton window to the center. People like me have been warning about such things. And people are starting to finally wake up, and that's why guys like James Lindsay have been kicked to the curb and are no longer important in the movement. But it was nice to see Marshall kind of just, that's kind of like the death nail for good old James Lindsay, because it just shows how absolutely out of touch the guy is. He's just out of touch, and nobody believes him, as they shouldn't. And beware of any of the MAGA centric influencers, the ones that are only Trump centered. They'll be gone in 2028. That's the problem I'm seeing. Not many other people I'm seeing is the people that are on Trump's tail right now because he's popular. As soon as he's gone, they're not going to support JD Vance. Some of them, like Chernovich, will stick around because that's his grift and he makes a pretty good living off of it. Same with his little tree, people like Will Chamberlain and so forth. People that have tried to wrestle the conservative, the conservative movement away from people of faith. And that's a big thing. All of these people that are now Trump surrogates are people without faith. Maybe guys like Jack Bosevic, but I have my problems with Jack and using his faith for certain things. But most of them are not people based in faith. They're morally, I'm trying to center myself. They're more just in it for profit. And they will be gone. They might be gone after the midterms, to be honest with you. If Trump suffers a pretty nasty loss in the midterms and it begins to look like the MAGA movement may be over as President BBL, it makes her ascendancy, which, by the way, she said she's interested in running. And all the people like on Timcast are all making fun of the fact that she has no shot and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I first think they would run women 2 times in a row. I think they're going to run Stephen A. Smith. I'm with Jason Whitlock. They're going to run Stephen A. Smith in the next election cycle. So it is what it is in that regard. But that's a whole conversation for a different place. James Lindsay has been exposed finally for the fat, stupid fraud that he is. I don't care. I've always had a problem with him. He's a disheveled mess of a man. All right, folks. Let's get to one more. I got one more hot take, and this is in response to yesterday's show. With the Afrikaners, talking about the Afrikaners and the left's response. This interaction with Scott Jennings and one of Biden's aides online really shows how far the masks has dropped for the left. I'll let you take a look at it and you can let me know your response. That's the next story.
The people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaners actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans. And so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also. And so that is what they are saying is discrimination. Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to, so if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave that country.
They're leaving to come here.
No, they can
these refugees are coming here.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Are you against them coming here?
Holland, probably. Holland.
Sorry, the anger of the left at Trump bringing in white people and giving them refugee status. If you think about it, the Afrikaners, which they're primarily settled Dutch colonists. They're descendants of Dutch colonists, and they began arriving in South Africa 1652 when the Dutch East India Company established the colony in the Cape of Good Hope. About 373 years. Estimates vary. And so how long do the white Afrikaners have to be there for it to be their land? By the way, the black population in South Africa is not native to South Africa as well. A lot of people think that they're their descendants because obviously they're black and they should be there. They actually, if you listen to white Afrikaners or people who know anything about South African history, a lot of the black population, because they didn't know how to colonize any of these things. They just came down from neighboring countries because there was a prosperous colony and they set up, stations or places to live around that colony because it was prosperous. And so it's ridiculous that, well, they can go back to their own home. I'm sorry. Why are we allowed? And I'm glad that this discussion is happening, and you got to give Trump credit for doing this. Why is this discussion allowed to be had? Why is there a certain group of people that has minority status that are being genocided, that are being attacked, that have very little options, that don't want to leave but are being forced to leave? Why are they being discriminated against? I think it needs to be called out as such. Why are they being discriminated against? It's because they hate white people, right? That's because they really, the leftist ideology is nothing more than anti-West. And it's really, if the left had a way, they would turn these United States into a version of South Africa, where there is a quote unquote minority rule and whites are going to have to be persecuted for said crimes that every other civilization has done. Every single Barbary pirates. Muslims have slaves. Libya right now is a slave trading capital in Egypt. And it ain't white Europeans that are running that slave trade. Asians have owned slaves. Blacks have owned slaves. Every other culture has owned slaves. Every other culture has conquered and battled with each other. Yet Western civilization is, and it's because of Christianity. Crotchety Elder is 100% correct on that. It's really the fact that its centering is on Christianity. That's why it must be destroyed. That's why it must be completely eliminated. Yeah, it has had that double standard problem. You're right about that. And so it's amazing to see this in real time, this type of blatant racism against one group of people, and the left expects us to just sit back and say, oh, you're right. These white people that are getting chopped up, murdered, killed, singled out because of the color of their skin. Yeah, that's fine. Let it happen. Who cares? We deserve it because we've been told for so long that we should accept white guilt, that we should accept our white guilt for crimes that we haven't committed. Hey, guess what? When the Tutsis and the Hutu went at it in Rwanda, not a white person was around. In fact, the only white people that were in Rwanda at that time were trying to stop it. I just watched Hotel Rwanda the other night. It's actually one of my favorite films. Right? The UN, with Canadians and Belgians and others, were the only ones trying to keep peace there. If they weren't there, Africans would have continued to chop each other up, which they did. And that's not even a racist thing to say, because that's an actual fact. But we have to sit here and we have to tiptoe around the subject, and we have to make sure that we don't upset people simply because it's not within their, and the emphasis is on their, scope. It's not there. They do not allow these conversations to be had. So I'm glad that Trump has done this. A, because those people needed to be saved. B, it opens up this conversation, and it shows their blatant racism to everybody. Because your average person has to go, well, I mean, when you were letting in everybody across the border for 4 years, even during the cough jab, and we didn't require them to get a jab, and all these other things are happening. We were told that it was okay, but these are 59 white people. Why are you guys losing your stuff over 59 white people? So very interesting indeed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our first story of the day here on RickCast. All right. From legalinsurrection.com, Trump will order cessation of sanctions against Syria. And boy, oh boy, did people have things to say about it today. Let's take a look. I have some video for you.
President Erdogan of Turkey, who called me the other day and asked for a very similar thing, among others, and friends of mine, people that I have a lot of respect for in the Middle East. I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance to rate this.
All right, so let me give you a breakdown on the left or right. So left-leaning outlets have all framed this as a humanitarian failure, because the left is all about humanitarianism when it suits their agenda, and politically self-interested maneuver, using emotionally charged language such as punishing sanctions and highlighting the collective punishment and big money deals tied to the Saudi nations, casting doubt on the genuine concern for Syrian civilians. And that's the left. So the right is telling us that the coverage spotlights Syria's strategic overtures, like the proposed Trump Tower in Damascus, emphasizing counterterrorism conditions and regional stability, often with skeptical or cautionary tones towards Syria's intentions and the feasibility of Trump's meetings. Yeah, maybe that's a good point, Mark. Maybe that's where he has an idea. That's where he's going to push the Palestinians to. But it was met with a lot of skepticism. But let's take a listen to Al Arabi Riyadh News and see what their take is on it. Their state news.
On it, pictures of the U.S. Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio traveling with the president to Riyadh. The first stop of a first foreign trip of a brand new administration. What does that tell us, do you think, about how Washington views the relationship with Riyadh?
Well, certainly, I think President Trump in particular views this as an important trip and a relationship that's worth continuing to enhance and to build on. And you saw him do that in his first term in Trump 1.0. Obviously, in Trump 2.0, he's doing exactly that, continue to build on their successes, and that is partially investment in deals, particularly around key investments and trade. But obviously, there's diplomacy.
All right, I got to point out, I don't know what's going on with this guy's eyebrow, but it's really just messing me up.
At play here as well. And so I think this is a trip that's very important, not just for investment deals being done or trade deals being done, but obviously where things stand with respect to Iran and discussions with trying to relations with Syria. Those are all things on the diplomacy side, diplomatic side, that are going to matter. An important trip, and so far it looks like it's off to a great start.
So that's obviously the state media very much in favor of this. So the indication of easing sanctions and improving diplomatic ties points to the possible U.S. backing for Syria's stability after the conflict. Of course, a conflict that the U.S. instigated and helped fund on both sides for a pipeline, but that's neither here nor there. You know who's not happy about it? Ben Shapiro. Contrast, Mark Levine, he's not very happy about it.
With terrorists and terrorist regimes. Americans do not like Iran and the regime that runs it. They're terrorists. They keep threatening to destroy us and our friends, the Israelis. They're trying to get nuclear weapons and put them on intercontinental ballistic missiles. We reject it. I speak for tens of millions of red-blooded Americans. I speak for Christians and Jews.
Let me be very clear, Mark Latrine. You don't speak for me, and I'm pretty sure you don't speak for my audience. So get off that high horse that you feel that you deserved. I don't know how you got there, but get off of it because you don't speak for me or my audience.
And others alike. This is the view of the American people. That's number one. Americans hate Hamas. We hate terrorists, butchers, Nazis. We hate men that kill babies.
He's essentially old man yells at cloud at this point.
That decapitate babies, that rape women and burn people alive and attack young teenagers at festivals. We hate them. We despise them. We got real questions about Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11. And the more that comes out, as the FBI just released some information about 6 to 8 months ago, the worse it looks that Saudi Arabia did in fact have a hand in helping Al-Qaeda.
I'm so glad Mark Latrine is figuring this out now. Most of us figured this out like in 2005, but I guess it's appropriate to be used now.
Attack us and kill over 2,000 of our fellow citizens. That's what we Americans reject and believe. We know who the good guys are. 80% of us support the state of Israel.
Yeah,
our holy.
I'll speak for it again. Let me know in the comment section on all the platforms if I'm not speaking for my audience doesn't care about any of that. I don't care about Israel. I don't care about Saudi Arabia. I don't care about Iran. I don't care about any of them. I don't. And I definitely want to be sending blood, treasure, and all these other things back to the Middle East.
Land for Jews and Christians. And most of us despise the terrorist and the terrorist regimes, all of which are one form of dictatorship or another. So that's the foundation. Let's begin there. If only Israel would accept the Palestinian state as a condition of Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, if that's a condition, then who cares if they join the Abraham Accords? Accept a ceasefire with Qatar-funded Hamas, so Hamas, you see, can rebuild and strike Israel again. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, you can definitely see. And then Ben Shapiro had a screed about this as well, but I will not subject my audience to you. I will not accept. I will not do that to you guys. I care about you too much in order to do that. But yeah, I gotta move that computer. So it's absolutely ridiculous to see. Let's see what happens. All right, this is Trump opening this up, lifting the sanctions on that. Most likely, I really like what Mark had to say about the fact that he's lifting it up so they can start developing camps and things like that without more scrutiny being put on them there. But yes, that was the big deal today. You know, there's a couple other things, but the biggest one was Trump lifting the sanctions and everybody just kind of freaking out about it in that regard, which is kind of funny because when we don't have those sanctions up, we pretty much fund everybody anyway. Because we fund every side to see who wins, and then we try to use them in our interests. So that's interesting. I am not very much into the Middle East stuff, the foreign stuff. I know people are like, oh well, Iran gets nukes and blah 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 blah. You don't want to go into Iran. It's a mountainous territory, man. People thought Afghanistan was bad. Iran is worse. It's not flat like Iraq. It is much more mountainous. And I think people that are clamoring for war, like Mark Latrine over here, who wants to go into war and fight the Saudis and all these other kinds of things. You know, it's always the old guys that have nothing to lose in positions of power that are willing to send those who are young to go die. All right, folks, this is RickCast. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell to help this show grow. I appreciate everybody here hanging out with me tonight on the 13th of May. And let's get to this. Yeah, that's right. It's huge. It's huge. That's a great point, Mark. It is huge. Good evening, G. It's good to see you. Thank you for hanging out and stopping by. Let's see here. We're doing I doubt Mark Levin has kids. And even if he did have kids, I don't know if he does or doesn't, but I guarantee his kids aren't going over there. His kids are not going over there. Not at all. And so I would not be surprised if they did something along the line. Oh, look at this. I think that's Busted Knuckles on Rumble. He definitely doesn't speak for me. That's right, my man. What's going on? Great to see you tonight. Thank you for hanging out with me, buddy. I always appreciate it. So it is what it is in that regard. So let's see how this plays out. Trump's pretty good when it comes to the foreign policy stuff of not getting us entangled in wars. And I think I think Trump's foreign policy, and this is just me flying off the cuff here, it mimics most closely to Washington, right? Alliances with all, treaties with none. The thinking being, if you're in working trade alliances with people, you're less likely to try and blow them up. And I think that may be I don't think Trump even understands that, but I think it might be the closest that Trump has to a foreign policy idea. But it is what it is in that regard. All right, let's get to our next story of the day. Let's take a look here at what we are going to be talking about. Not you, Mark Latrine. You're done. What is that? Why do they always put these? I'm trying to read my headline, man. Get out of here. I accept. Get out. Go away. 15 ads. DNC moves. Well, let me reset that because I got to try and do this for a segment. DNC moves forward, nullifying election of David Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta. Nobody cares about him as vice chairs. This is very interesting because this is just about the shape and the future of the Democratic Party and what they're trying to do. And it's very interesting. Left-leaning, let's go to the way this is being framed by the media. Left-leaning outlets are framing this DNC move to void David Hogg's election primarily as a procedural issue entangled with the gender equality. It's essentially like you can't have two people in this, like you can't have a male as a president and a male as the vice president. It's some stupid gender policy rule that they have. But it's dumb, and it's really just it's typical party politics. But they're also portraying Hogg as a reformist unfairly targeted by party insiders resistant to change, which is kind of interesting because David Hogg has been out there saying some interesting stuff like we need to primary Democrats that are in safe districts to try and get more people on our agenda, which people didn't like. Now he's saying that the Democratic Party needs to get males back, which, on paper sounds great, but most people within the party, they don't care about males. Males will never be a focus of their group because they don't think they matter. That's the biggest problem, is the Democratic Party does not think that males matter, and they'll continue to ostracize them as they continue to push the matriarchal concepts that they run with. So right-leaning coverage, so that's a left-leaning, trying to portray Hogg as an outsider who's being targeted, and that it's a procedural issue that they're trying to get rid of him on. Don't worry about it. It's not as controversial as you think it is. It's just a procedural thing. And also he's not towing the party line. He's trying to be more bossy than he is, blah, blah, blah. So right-leaning outlets are trying to highlight the party dysfunction, kind of what we're talking here, depicting Hogg as a radical and challenging the destabilization and labeling the DNC's action as a calculated removal to suppress insurgents, using sharper terms like bad news and martyr meets rebel. Center media maintains a measured, largely neutral tone, focusing on procedural errors. The whole thing, I should run as a Dixiecrat. Excuse me. I voted for Obama in 2012. That was over 10 years ago. I am not a Democrat. Mark, I will not take such slanderous language on my show. Dixiecrat. But it's very interesting to see that this whole thing blowing up within the Democratic Party. He was brought in, he won his thing because he was looked at. They need change, they need all these other kinds of stuff. And the fact of the matter is that they want to get younger. They think they want, well, they eventually, you're going to have to get younger. Eventually, you're going to have to move on from the people that are currently in charge, especially the ones that resulted in one of the biggest election blowouts in recent history here. And so it is what it is in that regard. But I just thought this was an interesting story. And we'll take a look at it going forward. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, okay. I should run conservatives. Oh, you're not talking about me. You're still slandering me as a Democrat. I got it. I got you, buddy. Fitness Chick 4. No, this hat is the keys of St. Peter. I was not in the military. I never signed, never did it. But this hat is made by a guy, a good friend of mine named JMJ Cat 3. You can find him on Instagram. He makes these kind of hats. And I like this hat because it's got the camo design, but these are also the keys of St. Peter here. So you can find him on Instagram, JMJCat3. So, yes, thank you for joining us tonight on Twitch. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to our next story because there's really not much about the David Hogg thing. I want to get to this one about Pope the 14th, which is very interesting in this regard. So this story comes to us from rns.com, and it's people trying to claim stuff from Pope Francis. See, look at me, I'm even doing it now. From Pope Leo XIV, and the idea being, well, he's this, he's that, he's so brand new. And I know Anthony Stein had a great video about this, talking about how everybody's trying to put their little stamp on the Pope and who he is. Yeah, JMJ Sacred Heart hat is great. I actually think I have that over there. But that's a Catholic thing online. JMJCat3.com, or find him on Instagram. He's great. So Pope Leo is following in the tradition of changing your papal name. And there's a reason behind that. It actually goes back all the way to 532. I want to make sure I got this correct. 532. And it was John II. See, John II was born Merculius, I believe so. And he chose the name because his birth name was that of a pagan god, which he felt was inappropriate for a pope. And this marked the beginning of the tradition of popes adopting a regal name. For my evangelical brothers and sisters on here that are not Catholic, and you're like, why didn't he just call himself Pope Prevost? Because that's his name. Well, these popes, and it's eventually came to be, okay, well, what's your name going to be? And that name is going to reflect ideas for your pontificate. And so we were waiting for our new pope last week. And when he was elected, he said he was going to take the name Leo XIV. And people went, oh, very interesting, Leo XIV. Because one of Pope Leo XIII's biggest things was his discussing and addressing of the Industrial Revolution. And Pope Leo XIV has decided that by taking the name Leo XIV, he is going to not focus, but he is going to go after and address AI, which is very interesting because as soon as this article came out and all of these things, even RNS, which is kind of a lefty article, a new Pope Leo appears to answer tech's new anti-human disruption. Like his predecessor, Leo XIII, he's concentrated with technology's power to shift us away from family and life connected to God's creation. Now, people think that it's going to be an anti-AI screed. I guess screed is my word for the day, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for a word for the day. But he's not going to do that. And I'm borrowing heavily from Eric Sammons here. Eric Sammons said essentially that Pope Leo XIV will come at it from a measured response and a measured point of view, addressing the positives and the negatives that AI can potentially bring to us. So let's see, became the first American Pope. He identified artificial intelligence as a major challenge to human dignity and to workers' rights, which is ironic because I use AI for a lot of this show. I use AI to write the descriptions, and I just used AI to look up some quick facts before the show began. So for as a researching tool, I think AI is very good. Of course, we've addressed on this show the problems that we were, the AI chatbots with females, that's very dangerous. The fact that AI will replace many jobs as it becomes more efficient. The fact that we're going to start getting humanoid robots that will have mobile AIs and in them that will take jobs and go to the store and get food for you and all these other things. So it's very interesting. And so Pope Leo XIV draws the parallels between AI and its current impact on civilization and the Industrial Revolution. And people don't realize how impactful the Industrial Revolution was, because it took people away from the farm. Essentially, it took people away from the farm and it brought people into the cities for work. And that was the beginning of this idea that you move from the farm to the city for work. And it broke up nuclear families, and then it spread people out over different places. Despite that fact, you're right, Mark. There is the idea that AI is much better at identifying cancers with different things. There are different AI apps and tools out there that if you take a drop of blood, I was watching Timcast when he was talking about this. You can take a drop of blood and it will give you, based on your current measurements, what diseases that you're going to be potentially getting and all other kinds of things. AI has the power to do some revolutionary things that could be great, but at the same time, as the Industrial Revolution had far-reaching consequences outside of, hey, we can make stuff and it's great, there are longer-lasting impacts of the Industrial Revolution, and Pope Leo XIII addressed that. And so it looks like people are formulating, because we won't know until Pope Leo XIV writes us his encyclical or whatever he writes as far as addressing AI and technology. Now, I have to understand that Pope Leo XIV is a mathematician. He's a canon lawyer. He's a very measured man. And that's something that a lot of people are very happy with post Francis. But it's going to be interesting. He's not like everything else he's done so far. And once again, we're not even a week in. He's very measured in the things that he is going after and addressing and trying to look out in his pontificate. And so it's very very good to see. So Pope Leo XIV has identified AI as one of humanity's greatest challenges, warning that it risks reducing human relations to algorithms, which we're starting to see. If you look at the fact that things like OnlyFans and Instagram and dating apps, we've already destroyed the human connection to such a point that men and women don't even date anymore. Men don't approach women anymore, right? Women have become hypersexualized and men have become more isolated because of technology. And the fact is, it's destroyed human intimacy. Now, the way they're trying to fix this is with IVF, which is they're essentially trying to turn us into asexual beings, right? They're trying to turn humans into asexual beings. And it's kind of funny in that regard to watch that in real time. But Pope Leo XIV is looking at that in a correct way, where, these algorithms and these things that we've all talked about this in this show. We've talked about it. We've addressed it in different ways. Oh, look at Instagram and how it's destroying kids. Look at this generation of children that have been brought up on iPads and how they don't know how to walk or turn a page or do all these other things. We've identified them in all these other ways. And it looks like Pope Leo XIV is going to try and just wrangle all of this together and try to make it something to formally address. Also, it's the idea that these algorithms are threatening workers' rights. He's going to be calling, at least he's saying, he's called for ethical regulations of AI and expressed concern about job losses due to automation, emphasizing the need to protect human dignity in the digital age, which, guys like Elon Musk, whatever you think of him, he's been like, we need AI, it's coming. We have to embrace it, but everybody's admitting, oh, it's going to take jobs, but nobody's addressing the fact that what are human beings going to do? Are we going to become the fat Wall-E people? Right? If you've seen the movie Wall-E, where we just sit in chairs all day, consuming Paramount Plus and slopping up whatever food is presented for us. How do we protect human dignity in this age where a lot of people get their primary purpose through work? And Catholicism has long addressed the dignity of work, or at labora and so forth. And so how do we address this? And Pope Leo XIV and is at least going to try and address this in his pontificate. So it's going to be very interesting that we have the economics and the global challenges of AI contrasted through the lens of Catholicism, an institution that has withstood everything that has, been presented to it since its foundation, essentially in 33 AD. I'm sorry. Yeah, 33 AD. So it's very interesting, and it's people are trying to cast their ideas on Pope Leo XIV and trying to do this while he's saying, we're going to address AI. We're going to try to look at human dignity, because nobody else is. Nobody else is, and nobody else wants to. We just want to get the technology in. We just want to start it up. We just want to get it moving. And I think this is going to be one of those one of these encyclicals or whatever he releases that will be read for a long time. And I think it's going to be a lot more impactful than people understand. And I think our Holy Father understands it, and that's why he's approaching it as one of the major pillars of his pontificate. So if you're wondering, if you're an evangelical or you're a Protestant, you're like, hey, I don't know why you guys change your names. What's the reason behind that? Well, it started back in 532 with John II, because his name was the name of a pagan god, and he didn't want that for the Catholic Church. And it's evolved over time where popes will pick a name based on the ideas of what they want to do within their pontificate. Like Cardinal Bergoglio picked Francis because he wanted to be it was a change, and he tried to focus on the famous vision that St. Francis had, go fix my church, and so forth. It's going to, and so forth. So every pope picks a name, and that name is representative of supposedly things that they want to do and focus on during their pontificate. And it looks like Pope Leo XIV is channeling Pope Leo XIII. Pope Leo XIII took on the Industrial Revolution. Pope Leo XIV is going to challenge AI, but not like challenge AI, but bring the challenges of AI forward, that instead of having them addressed in hushed tones, that we can bring them to the forefront and really see what we can do to address them in a dignified manner. And I don't think that's a bad, when we use the word dignity and so forth, the left has destroyed those buzzwords. They've destroyed so many words by turning them into buzzwords that there's actually those words have meaning, the dignity of work and so forth. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I am, of course, praying for the Holy Father in that regard. And just one last thing. So right now, how has the Vatican currently evolved in addressing these challenges? The Vatican is taking active steps to address AI challenges by participating in the Rome call for AI ethics with major tech companies like Microsoft and IBM, issuing guidelines emphasizing AI must serve humanity, and calling for the international treaties to regulate AI development. So yeah, that's, he doesn't seem that. You're right, Mark. He seems he seems traditional in the fact that He doesn't want to upset the actual church. And I think a lot of people, I know this much. I watched a couple of Anthony Stein videos today. Great account if you have time to follow him. And the Germans are not happy with him right now. If you know anything about what's going on in the church right now, the German bishops are not happy with Pope Leo XIV right now. So that may tell you something about that. All right, folks, this is RickCast. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. Apparently, we're doing really well on Getter. I'm very happy to be over there. You guys are fantastic. And continue to watch. And if you want, hit the like button, repost it for get more people on there on Getter to watch and subscribe to the channel, and that'd be great. So I'm very happy to be there. Also happy to be on YouTube and Rumble and X. And all the places, even on Twitch. We had some interactions from Twitch today. So hello to my Twitch users. Always great to see you guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our last story of the day. We're done. We're going to have some fun here. We're going to talk some sports, hopefully get some debate going in the chat as well. Let's take a look. Last story of the day. As soon as I can get this into, I don't need two of the same story. That's why my computer is not wrong. Because I got 4,000 tabs. I think that's the most appropriate thing to do. Everybody's trying to put their stamp on him. He's going to probably be there for 20 years. So we need to just take it day by day. I think people are, of course, because of Francis derangement syndrome, FDS, there's a lot of people that are just so worried about what's going to happen to aspects of the church. And I think they need to go watch that Sensus Fidelium video. Obedience is not optional. It's a great video. Go subscribe to Sensus Fidelium. Do it now. All right, let's have some fun. Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson have been reinstated from the MLBs, and Major League Baseball for those who are watching, ineligible list. Next stop, Hall of Fame. Let me get out there and say Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. He gambled on the sport. Gambling is all over the place now. Baseball, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, nobody cares about. They're all sponsored by gambling. So you cannot keep Pete Rose out for something that is being promoted and is sponsoring sports today. So it is what it is. He's also served his time. The reinstated players will be eligible for the next Baseball Classic era committee vote in December 2027. Pete Rose, Major League Baseball's all-time hit leader, has been posthumously reinstated by Major League Baseball's Commissioner Rob Manfred. The league announced on Tuesday. The decision removes Rose from the MLB's permanently ineligible list after some 36 years, as Manfred ruled that lifetime bans do not apply posthumously. I can't say it. Just go with me. Manfred's decision comes after a petition filed by the California Attorney Jeffrey Lankoff, who represented Rose prior to his September 2024 death at the age of 83, and public pressure from one Donald Trump, who says we should get him back in the hall. Do we actually have that now? He had a truth post about it, but I'm not going to read that today. I also have maybe not a popular opinion, but Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and Barry Bonds should all be in the Hall of Fame as well. And my reason for that is without Mark McGwire and without Sammy Sosa, baseball is dead. Okay. Baseball turned a blind eye to Mark McGwire. Baseball turned a blind eye to Sammy Sosa and to a bunch of different guys who were, on the stuff, the cream or the clear or the injections or whatever, because they were desperate to get people back in the seats. You can't turn your eye from it one time and then come back and be like, "Oh, you guys cheated." You know what? Here's my third unpopular opinion in this segment. If you get paid millions of dollars, and it's entertainment, by the way, sports is entertainment. If you're getting paid millions, you can do whatever it takes. I don't care. Well, what about a bad example? Your role model should be your parents, not a baseball player. And if Mark McGwire is getting paid $25 million a year to smash home runs, and whatever he was taking helps him smash home runs, let him do it. Being on steroids or being on that stuff does not make you a better baseball player. It just makes you able to recover quicker. By the way, you also have pitchers in the Hall of Fame that used amphetamines. You know what I'm talking about. The stuff like especially speed for double headers, because he used to pitch double headers. So there's a lot of hypocrisy with baseball keeping people out of their Hall of Fame, despite the fact despite the fact that without Barry Bonds, without Sammy Sosa, without Mark McGwire, baseball dies. Baseball would not be as baseball would be behind NASCAR if it wasn't for these guys. Ty Cobb's in the Hall of Fame. He's not exactly a saint. Not even a blessed. So it's interesting in that regard. Let's see. Obviously, a person no longer with us cannot represent a threat to the integrity of the game, Manfred wrote in a letter. Moreover, it's hard to conceive of a penalty that has more deterrent effect on one than lasts a lifetime and no reprieve. Therefore, I've concluded that the permanent ineligibility ends upon the passing of the disciplined individual, and Mr. Rose will be removed from the permanently ineligible list. Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was banned for the Chicago Black Sox scandal, and 15 other players have also been. I don't think he should be, but Pete Rose should absolutely be. He should be in the Hall of Fame. It's not even a choice. He should be there, and he should be there immediately. He should get it in December. While Rose restoration is a necessary first step towards one day appearing in the Baseball Hall of Fame, Manfred's decision does not guarantee such an outcome. That decision will ultimately be made by the Hall itself at multiple levels of oversight. Next step is to be nominated by the Hall of Fame's Historic Overview Committee, which is selected by baseball writers, and those guys are huge dickheads. I'm sorry to be cussing language. Baseball writers are some of the worst people on the planet. Of course, sports writers are journalists, and we don't like journalists. Journalists are jerks. We don't like them. Really? Ty Cobb carried a pistol in the outfield? I think he's my favorite baseball player now. That's awesome. I called the ball. You damn right I did. On that point, the Hall of Fame's chairman of the board, Jane Forbes, that's not a good sign, Clark, released the following statement. The National Baseball Hall of Fame has always maintained that anyone removed from baseball's permanently ineligible list will become eligible for the Hall of Fame consideration. Major League Baseball's decision to remove deceased individuals from the permanently ineligible list will allow for the Hall candidacy of such individuals to now be considered. The Historical Overview Committee will develop the ballot of 8 names from the Classic Baseball Era Committee, which evaluates blah, 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 blah. I mean, he's the all-time hits leader. Right? As a player, right? His placement on the list was a result of his alleged betting on baseball, allegations finally admitted to in his 2004 autobiography after years of denials. According to MLB's investigations, Rose on multiple occasions bet on Cincinnati Reds to win from 85 to 87, during which time he both played and managed. Rose had appealed for reinstatement multiple times, including one that was denied by Manfred in 2015. Rose placement on the list was in keeping with the punishment laid out in the text of Rule 21D, which were his decades posted on every major league clubhouse. Yeah, how does 21D deal with the fact that FanDuel and all of these companies now sponsor these games? How does that impact it? It's outdated. I mean, you shouldn't be betting on games, obviously, but at the same time, you shouldn't have gambling companies sponsor them. That's the problem. And so it is what it is in that regard. As a player, Rose spent parts of 24 seasons in the majors, 19 with his hometown Reds. Over that span, Rose amassed an MLB record of 4,265 hits. He's also the all-time leader in games played at 3,562 and plate appearances at 15,890. In addition to being named National League MVP in 73 and 17 All-Star elections, he owned 3 World Series rings. Reds owner Bob Castellini released the following statement through the club, blah, blah, blah. On behalf of the Reds and our generational loyal fans, we are thankful for the decision of Manfred and Major League Baseball regarding the removal of Pete Rose from permanently ineligible list. He should be in. He should be in, and he should be in immediately. I mean, the guy's dead. You guys punished him long enough. So it is interesting in that regard. What about Darryl Strawberry? He was on drugs and alcohol. Yeah, I think every case they come up with BS reasons. They come up with BS reasons for all this stuff, Lou. They always have this gray area of integrity of the game. Integrity of the game. Or it's integrity of the game. That's blah, 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 blah. When we're only looking at the Hall of Fame is stats and statistics. And eventually, as time goes on, when a little kid goes to the Hall of Fame and he looks at Pete Rose's plaque, there's not going to be somebody standing next to the plaque and say, you know, little girl, he was caught betting on games in 1985 to 1987. No, they're just gonna read the plaque and say, oh, this guy was all-time leader in hits and plate appearances and all these other. He was a great baseball player. Instead of doing all these other nonsensical things that they like to do. So it is what it is. I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame today, and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and all those other people should be in the Hall of Fame, right? And it's about daggone time, because the writers, who are not perfect people, are trying, and they're like, oh, it's the Hall of Fame, and it's that. Yeah. Judge them on the statistics, not as they were people. So it is what it is. All right, folks. That is it for this episode of RickCast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, guys. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, do all the fun things to help the show grow. Thank you to everybody on Getter. I can say this now because the show's over. At one point during this show on Getter, we had more viewers than Steve Bannon's War Room because of you guys on Getter. So big shout out to you guys on Getter. We're doing big things over there. I'm very proud to be over there. But of course, I love my bar rats on YouTube. You guys are the best. You guys are the show that make you know, your comments make the show that much better. So I thank all of you guys for helping this show grow. It's thanks to you, and I am in your debt. So yeah, Getter is a social media platform. Getter's like Parler, and a couple other ones. Yeah, they still exist, and people, they have a very large base of people both on Getter and Parler that nobody is going after. So we also have 114 subs on Rumble and 160 subs on YouTube. So we're growing, and it's a good time, and I appreciate every single person that takes the time to sub. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. I will talk to you guys tomorrow here on RickCast. Y'all stay safe out there. God bless. And until that day comes, free Dexter Taylor.